Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joey Adams, and today, for my topic, I will be speaking about historical arguments. Now, hopefully, a historical argument won't devolve into a shouting match like that. Historical argument is just when people have a difference of opinion about something that happened in the past. And an argument is when people try to prove their point of view. However, it seems like sometimes this is harder than it should be, because some things get in the way of people coming to a resolution with arguments. And so let's start off with just an introduction. As historians, we seek to understand the past, to look at past events and understand why they did this, how did it happen, can it happen again? And sometimes people disagree with each other's findings, and this is when we have arguments. Not arguments in the sense of two people shouting and yelling at one another, but arguments in the sense that people have a difference of opinion on something and they need to find out the answer. And note, arguments happen every single day. Because we're used to arguments being shouting matches, we don't realize that just us trying to convince someone of something is an argument. If you're talking to your friend about who's the better superhero, Spider-Man or Batman, that is an argument. If you're trying to convince someone to try a new product, that's an argument for why they should do something. So arguments are all around. But as historians, when we look at arguments, usually we're trying to figure out the truth. Truth is what we're looking for. Well, in the perfect world, that's what we're looking for. We're not looking just to prove our point. We're looking to find the answers for all the questions that we're looking for. And to answer these questions, we need to support our statements. They could be primary resources. They could be photographs at the time. You can work off of someone else's work who has studied this issue before and build upon what they have already done. It's a lot of things you can do. But you have to support your statements. You have to support what you think. You just can't think something. You have to think and then show why your thought has merit. So in short, an opinion is worthless. However, an informed opinion is priceless. A formed opinion is priceless. And this is something that sets humans apart from other animals. We are the rational creatures. We are the rational beings on the earth. We can use logic. We don't have to be guided by our basic instincts, or what Freud would call our id. So we use evidence to support our ideas. And some of the best ways that we support these ideas are primary sources. And so let's just see how we use primary sources in the mode of historical debate. There are a number of different ways that we do this. And some of the ways start off with using primary sources. Primary sources is going to be something that's going to help any discussion of history. Many times people would revise history and change why people did things, the reasons for this, the reason for that. However, many times you can look in primary sources and point out just what the people were saying at the time. A good example of this is the Lost Cause movement. The Lost Cause movement is people who try to divorce slavery from the Civil War. However, there are documents at the time from multiple states that highlight why they're leaving the Union, and over, slavery was mentioned. Ironically, many people say it was just state rights and nothing else. But in South Carolina's reasons for leaving, they literally complain that the federal government isn't overriding the northern states who would not enact the fugitive slave law. So, in their own words, the South was asking for more federal government control. And so now we can see that, yes, slavery played a role in the Civil War. And from there, you can go on to say how big of a role it played.
And see, it should be that simple. You should be able to say, I have this point of view, I have backed it up, and now what do you have to counter it? But things are never that simple. Here's an example of why. Think about this logic question. You and your wife or husband have a rental at a log cabin. The log cabin is $500 down and non-refundable. You and your significant other are on the road to the cabin, and you look at your significant other and you say, I really hate log cabins. And he or she looks back at you and says, I hate them too. And so what should that couple do? The logical thing would be to turn back around because the $500 is gone. But because of what's known as the sunk cost fallacy, most people will still go to the log cabin that they don't like because of the $500 that they spent. They don't want to feel like it's going to waste. And what does the sunk cost fallacy have to do with historical debates? Many times we fall into the same type of fallacies and biases when we are doing historical research and when we're trying to prove our point. I know at the start I talked about how we are all trying to find truth, but sometimes even without us knowing it, we have these biases that can put our finger on the scale when it comes to truth. And so these are things that we have to watch out for.
We have talked a lot about humans being rational, being beings who can use logic. However, as much as we use logic, humans can also be pushed and moved by emotion. Many times when emotion takes over, that's when we get the typical arguments that we think about with people yelling and fighting with one another. And at that point, it's no longer about finding the truth, it's about someone trying to be right. And it doesn't even have to be that extreme. People can do little tiny things that could get different outcomes because of our emotions, and they understand how to use emotions to benefit them. And we're going to talk about some of those ways right now. For example, we have what's known as the framing effect. The framing effect is basically just how you word a question. Depending on how you ask a question, you can elicit a different emotion and a different response. There are other things that we can run into as well. such as confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is when we're looking into something and we're trying to find the information that supports what we already believe. And this goes as far as overlooking information that doesn't fall in line with what you already believe, or in your mind changing information to fit what you already believe. An example of this is if someone thinks that pepper jack cheese is healthy for you and that you can eat all the pepper jack cheese that you want and stay healthy. He or she could find 5 articles saying, hey, you shouldn't eat too much pepper jack cheese. But if he finds one article that says, hey, pepper jack cheese is good for you, he will hold that article up and forget everything else. In the context of historical research, the same thing can be seen. People can be trying to find one thing that supports their point of view. They could find all these historical documents that disprove their stance, but one thing that kind of supports it, and they will forget about all the things that disprove their belief and hold up the thing that kind of supports it as the only piece of information that matters. So when we are trying to find historical facts and we are dealing with people who are just using emotion, we have to remember that we cannot sink to their level. We have to stay strong and stay by our logic. And note, this doesn't mean that everyone would agree on everything. People could have the same information and come to different conclusions and still use logic. Will not always guarantee that everyone comes out with the same mindset, but everyone should be using logic. Everyone should try to get emotions out the way so we could come to a better understanding. And lastly, when we talk about get emotions out the way, this doesn't mean that you have to be an emotionless robot. It just means that know that you can't let your passion take you away.
I hope you enjoyed my discussion on arguments, and I hope that you use some of these techniques when you're arguing with someone about historical facts. Not the logical ones to trick people, but things like primary sources, being sure that you back yourself up. These are things that true historians use. And remember, we're always trying to find the truth because today is a good day for history.